to the intro, Eric. Good morning.
Morning.
This is way closer than it normally is, so I'm just going to nudge it back a little bit. Just a little bit claustrophobic is all. Too many devices to turn on. There we go. Sorry, I have a stopwatch up here now, just to kind of keep things moving along. Also lets me know if I have to stretch for time. I was thinking the other day about how we perceive things as people, about how we interpret things, about how we read things and see things and hear things and taste things, and how we interpret things differently as people. If I asked you where the best place to get lasagna was, I would tell you that you're wrong, and the answer is Pasta Nostra and Longwood. If you asked me who the greatest band in the world was, I would say, no, you're wrong, it's The Clash, or something like that. Because we interpret things differently. If you sat two people down with an identical meal, or an identical book, or an identical movie, they would interpret it differently. A really good example of this is there's a really great website out there called Metacritic.com, and it's a really great resource if you're a movie nerd like me, because what it does is there's this thing out there called metadata, and what it is it takes all the reviews for something and it compiles them into, like, let's say a reviewer gives a movie 3 out of 5 stars. That movie ranks at 60%. That gets fed into the metadata, and what you have is you have a couple hundred reviews that come out with a number between 1 and 100. And it gives you a general vibe of how critics are perceiving things. For example, the new Ninja Turtles movie came out this weekend. 34%, according to like 200 some odd critics. Probably something you want to avoid, but hey, that's just my opinion. But it's one of those things where we just interpret things differently. People will look at that data and go, oh no, that's incorrect, that movie's brilliant. That's like the Citizen Kane of Ninja Turtle movies. Said nobody ever. But actually, that's not true, because the rule about the internet is if you say it, if you think it, somebody out there has that opinion. I can make a joke about it all I want, but somebody out there has that opinion, that Ninja Turtles is the Citizen Kane of Ninja Turtle movies. And more importantly, as we get closer and closer to common interests with people, we realize there are divisions inside of common interests. Like if I asked you if you like football, and you said yes, I'd be like, great, we both love football, let's be best friends. But then we start going down the rabbit hole a little bit, and I find out that your team is different from my team, and we got a rivalry there, and now I think of you less as a person, I guess. I'm not really sure how that works. Not super into sports, but I'm a Redskins fan. That should probably say a lot, but see, I got thumbs down over there. Her and I can't be best friends now. I'm sorry. But it's one of those things that when we go further and further down like the rabbit hole of common interests and common activities and hobbies and loves and passions and things like that, we realize that the splits become like greater and greater and greater. It's like, oh, even if we like the same movie, we like different things about it. And it's one of those things that really makes us unique, because mankind has a competitive nature to it. Because in our minds, we are right all the time about things that are based strictly on opinion. Now, you look at something like hot and cold. Now, scientifically, freezing and boiling is dictated. You know, you've got like 32 degrees is freezing. Like that's not debatable. But hot and cold is entirely debatable, because it's all subjective. Last week, or a couple of weeks ago, it was like 90, 95, 100 degrees outside. And so last week or the week before rather, when it was like 80 degrees, that wasn't hot to me anymore. But you look at somebody else and go, oh no, 80 degrees, that's hot. You know, that's entirely too hot. I don't want to be outside when it's 80 degrees. But I loved it compared to a much hotter temperature. I taught high school a couple of years ago, and I will tell you, if it is not 74 degrees outside with the wind not going, it is either too hot or too cold. If it's 70 degrees, it's entirely too cold. The kids don't want to go outside. If it's 76 degrees, it's entirely too hot. The kids don't want to go outside. And it's one of those things where we look at opinions and how they're subjective and how we interpret things and perceive things and taste things. And it's one of those things that really makes us unique as people. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, except for the person who gave me the thumbs down a minute ago. We're going to talk afterwards. See me after class, young lady. No, I'm just kidding. But it really is one of those things. See, when she came in here, she didn't realize I would like nag at the audience like I normally do. And it's one of those things where it's not a bad thing that we have opinions as people. It's a great thing that we can go out there and people can interpret things differently. Like, I was here testing the speakers yesterday, and I just decided to pipe classical music through them because I needed noise to come through the speakers constantly to try and figure out what was wrong. I got one of them working, sidebar there. But it's one of those things where, like, I don't even like classical music that much. I just needed noise to come through the speakers, and I needed it to not be too intrusive. And so I have a little app on my phone that will just play whatever music I need. And I said, I don't know, Mozart's a classical guy, okay. And it's not that I have like a hatred for it or anything. It's just not my thing. And that's really how a lot of opinions work. We don't have necessarily strong opinions for or against things. You know, I'm not so against this or so for that like it's going to like shatter my relationships with people. You know, like, my parents love golf. I don't get golf. I don't. And, you know, if they're watching this later on YouTube, Mom and Dad, I'm sorry, I don't get golf. I don't get it. My mom takes a nap during golf. I get that. So, like, I totally understand that. That makes sense. Sunday afternoon naps rank awesome in my book. But golf, not as a sport so much. But it's not that I hate it or I don't understand it or whatever. I just, like, at a core level, I just don't get it. I just don't get the interest in it. You know, I like going to hockey games because they're, like, kinetic and fast-moving and kind of violent at times. And, like, football is always exciting because it's always, like, down to the snap and all that. But, you know, there are some things I just don't get. But still, there's that competitive nature. Like, we have those people... We have those friends, we have those co-workers that we just love to debate with, that we love to talk about with in regards to sports and religion and politics and food and football and all those things. We just love talking about it because there's a part deep inside our brain that thinks that we're going to sway their opinion and we're going to change their mind and they're going to come around to our side of the table. Spoiler alert, not going to happen. But still, we persist. We persist as people who love to have a competitive nature. We love to get out there. We love to try and fight and debate. And we love to try and win, despite the fact that it's not really a battle that we can win. People's opinions are rooted in several factors based on nature and nurture and things like that. You know, like, I don't know if I'd be into music as much as I am if it wasn't for my mom. My mom's, like, super into music, and we love talking about it, and we love nerding out about it. It's such a great thing that we share. And I'm not sure if I'd be into movies as much if it wasn't for my friends that I grew up with. Like, I had those friends that, like, during the summer, we'd go to movies every single week, and we'd go to midnight shows, and it was, like, an amazing experience. And that's just burrowed deep down in my DNA. But when it comes to our faith, and, you know, this is the point where everybody starts to go, oh, he has a point to all this madman right there. But when it comes to our faith, and we look at the idea of what it means to be of the same mind, to be unified under the same philosophies and beliefs and opinions, how does that differ from sports and religion and food and things like that? Really quick sidebar, I was listening to a radio program last week where one of the hosts proclaimed that Taco Bell was the best place to get Mexican food. That's crazy. It absolutely is. But, you know, that's an opinion thing. But, so, coming back to this point of what we're going to be looking at today in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 10 through 17, we're looking at the idea of what it means to be united and divided as followers of Christ. We're going to look at the 2 points and really examine what it is that we look at when we look at other Christians, when we look at ourselves internally, when we examine ourselves. What do we find there? Who do we find those common interests with? So 1 Corinthians chapter 1, starting in verse 10. As soon as I drink a sip of water. It's lemon water, by the way. I was completely surprised by that this morning. Apparently yellow label, it says lemon. Got me off guard. Which is another perception thing. I was expecting water. I appeal to you, brothers and sisters, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that all of you agree with one another in what you say, and that there be no divisions among you, but that you be perfectly united in mind and in thought. My brothers and sisters, some from Chloe's household have informed me that there are quarrels among you. What I mean is this: one of you says, I follow Paul, another, I follow Apollos, another, I follow Cephas, still another, I follow Christ. Is Christ divided? And so what we're looking at here is an example of people following the leaders of their church rather than following Christ. Following the people who have brought them into the fold. People who are worshiping the people or who are not actively following Christ, because they kind of come in and they get baptized and they get saved, and they look at the person who has baptized them and who has saved them, quote unquote. It's really important here to recognize that the person doing the baptizing is not actually saving that person's soul. But they look at that and they form a bond with that person so strong where they say, oh, I follow Paul. Paul got me into this whole church thing. I'm going to follow him. I'm going to be a believer in Paul. I believe in Paul. I'm going to follow him. And it's one of those things where he's writing this letter trying to clarify this concept about how our faith in Jesus Christ is not based on the power and the ability of the people that are in charge. I've spoken about this before, the idea about how I'm just this mouthpiece, and how when I really get into it and I really get into kind of the groove of things and I get out there afterwards and people shake my hand, tell me a really good job, I've always got that half joke of, great, what did I talk about? Not as a test, but because once I'm in the zone, once like the thoughts are free flowing and I'm mentally shifting gears, I'm really not focused on my ability anymore. I'm taking this spark that God has given me, and I'm kind of putting it out there, and I'm putting the thoughts and the ideas out there, but it all comes from Him. These are not necessarily original ideas or original concepts. It's not like a brilliant sermon that I came up with all on my own, because I needed the Word of God to translate that. And so, as absolutely cool as it would be to have people say, oh, I follow Tim. I go to the Church of Tim. You know, on a really egotistical, maniacal, like really sadistic level, like that would be cool, but that's not the point of what we're doing here or what I'm doing here right now. This is an example of how people were interpreting it wrong back then. And so he posed the question, is Christ divided? Was Paul crucified for you? Were you baptized in the name of Paul? I thank God that I did not baptize any of you except for Crispus and Gaius, so that none can say that you were baptized in my name. Yes, I also baptized the household of Stephanos. Beyond that, I don't remember if I baptized anyone else. For Christ did not send me to baptize, but to preach the gospel, not with wisdom and eloquence, lest the cross be emptied of its power. What he's talking about here is there is no power in what I do. There's no behind-the-scenes trick. There's no man behind the curtain. There's nothing on my end of things. If you hear these words that I'm speaking and they resonate with you, and you connect with it, and you want to be part of that, that has nothing to do with what I'm doing up here. That is all entirely the ability that God has given out. That is all the power of God. That is all the power of His Son. And so, Paul was not crucified for us. We were not baptized in the name of Paul. It was not because of the actions of a man, but because of the actions of a God that we are saved. It is one of those things that when we really look at it, because here's the problem. Here's where the core problem is. If we look at someone like Paul, and we say, oh, I'm a follower of Paul. I was baptized in the name of Paul. Paul, redeemed my sins for me. The problem is, then you start digging around into Paul's background. You start digging around into Paul's history. And you go, wow, Paul had a really shady history at the beginning. Paul was kind of a terrible person for a long, long time, and just recently came around. I don't know if I want to be a believer in Paul. And so because I have placed my faith in Paul, because I have placed my faith in the human being, and I have examined that person's past, I have chosen to walk away from it. because I have put my faith in a man instead of a God. And that's really where the problem lies. That's really the point that he is trying to address in this passage, is talking about the idea of how we as people are inherently flawed. If you dug around in my past, you'd probably find some things you'd have a problem with. Either dumb things I did when I was younger or opinions I had. The internet is a big, big, big thing for that. Because you stick it on the internet and you put it out there, and it's out there pretty much forever for anybody to see. And they can find it. And they can find those bitter rantings you wrote in college when you were angry at God and you were trying to sort things out. And so if you follow me and you dig around those things, you're going to look at that and go, oh, maybe Tim doesn't really know what he's doing. I mean, sure, he's handsome and he's charming, he's well-versed, but maybe he doesn't have all the answers, so I'm not going to follow Tim. And you get up and you walk out and you leave forever because Tim messed up. He dropped the ball. And that's why we don't follow people. Because when we put our faith in people totally, it is not to say that don't have faith in people. Absolutely have faith in people. Have faith that in the end they will make the right decision. Have faith that they will help you through this or you will help them. It is not to say that don't have that relationship. Because he talks about earlier in the verse that all of you agree with one another in what you say and that there be no divisions among you. But that you be perfectly united in mind and in thought. But what he's saying is don't put your faith in it in terms of salvation. Don't empty out your entire faith on a person because they're going to let you down. At some point, I'm going to drop the ball, I'm going to mess up, and that's going to create ripple effects and things like that. And in that moment, thank God that you weren't following me. Literally, thank God that you weren't following me. Because it's one of those things where we have leaders and we have inspiration and we have our personal heroes and things like that, but we're never going to be at that level that Jesus is. Because Jesus Christ died for the sins of humanity. He died so that everyone before him and everyone during his time and everyone after him, he died for the sins of humanity. He took all the world's problems and he put them on his shoulders and he went up on that cross and he took it. And that is absolutely 100% something that I will not do. Okay, fine. I'll give my life for my best friend, or my parents, or my brother. But those guys I work with, that guy who cut me off in traffic, no, forget those guys. I'm not dying for their sins. I'll die for your old sins. You guys seem like a cool group. But later this afternoon, I'm going to run into somebody who kind of rubs me the wrong way. Maybe during a transaction at a store, or maybe somebody I run into in the mall or something like that. Pardon me. And it's one of those things, still lemon water by the way. And it's one of those things where I look at my ability, my capacity of love and forgiveness, and that is infinitely more limited than the love and forgiveness that Jesus has demonstrated for us. My ability for love and forgiveness is strictly limited to what is convenient for me and people I am willing to bother to forgive. And when you look at that, you go, oh wow, Tim really is a selfish person. But then you kind of look at it internally and go, oh well, I'm kind of on the same page that he is. Maybe I don't necessarily want to forgive people or let things go or let go of these trappings or conflicts in my life. But we're encouraged to be of the same mind. Because our faith is not something as trivial as movies or football. And I'm sorry. I just called football trivial. And I'm sorry. Because I know a lot of people kind of cringe at that thought. And go, no, football season's about to start. It's going to be the best year ever for my team. They're going to the Super Bowl. They probably aren't. But it's one of those things where it really is trivial in the eyes of our faith and our eternal salvation. It really is something that we need to focus on and honestly take more seriously. Because at the end of the day, when I'm yelling at my coworkers about politics or movies or whatever it is, we get to the end of the argument and we're both flustered and we're both tired, and then we kind of laugh it off and get on with our day. But to really be of the same mind, to be unified as people, to be perfectly united in mind and in thought, we have to set aside those limitations that we keep putting up in front of ourselves. Because I talked about how the deeper we go down the rabbit hole into interests, the more subdivisions are created. And unfortunately, that's true for Christianity as well. I'm a Christian, you're a Christian, we should be best friends. Oh no, wait, you're not the right kind of Christian. Oh, you're that kind of Christian? Oh, I'm sorry. I guess we can't be best friends. I'm sorry. And it's one of those things where when you look at that, that's not the attitude that we're supposed to have. We're supposed to pursue these relationships, and we're supposed to talk to one another and open dialogues and find that common ground and really live the way that Jesus wants us to live, not based on denominational lines, but based on faith. Based on the idea that we are all sinners, that we have all messed up, that we all need the opportunity to try and ask an apology for that, to try and gain a pardon for that. Looking back to communion this morning, talking about the example of a coin, that's a brilliant example about how we've already received our coin. We have already received our forgiveness of being followers of Jesus Christ. And therefore, it is our responsibility and our obligation to go out there and try and better the world. Whether it be with a single person or whether it be with masses of people, with hundreds and thousands of people. Whatever it is, whatever your purpose is in this life, we have a destiny as followers of Christ, and that is to go out there and share this message with people. And to let people know that despite our differences, despite the fact that you think the Redskins are terrible, despite the fact that there are differences and barriers in our lives, that is irrelevant in the eyes of faith. That is irrelevant in the eyes of Jesus Christ. That is irrelevant in the gift that He gave us. Because He doesn't care about any of that, regardless of how much you pray during any sports season. Please let them go to the playoffs. Please let them go to the Super Bowl. Please, 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 please. It's not about that. It's about the idea of how we need to connect as people. Like one-on-one, group-to-group, during our Bible study, during our everyday lives. That's when it's the hardest, I know. I'm fully aware of that. Because during the week, that's one of those things where, like, if you followed the Church of Tim, and you happen to run into Tim on a Tuesday during his lunch break where he's yelling at somebody on the phone or typing out an angry email, that's one of those things that would make you go, oh, I don't know if I really want to be part of the Church of Tim. Yeah. But it's one of those things where when you look at that, it's because you don't have faith in me. You have faith in a power that is above me. You have faith in a power that is higher than me and more powerful and more infinite and honestly more loving. My love for humanity is tested on a daily basis, as is yours. There are always those little stopgaps. And there's always those little things that, like, when the first thing goes wrong in the morning, you go, oh no, there goes the day. Because those 5 seconds just diluted 24 hours for you. And so for the next 24 hours, you're officially on watch, and things are going to be terrible. And you're going to be angry and grumbling and things like that. But I ask you to push through those things, using a power that is much more potent and much more wonderful than our own strength and our own limitations. I ask you to use the power of Jesus Christ. To look at that and really ask yourself, it's a hokey thing, or the bracelets for a really long time, but what would Jesus do? That was the whole point of that exercise. And it didn't stick, and people don't really wear them anymore. But just internalize. Evaluate yourself. That's one of those things where we are our own worst critics. I'm going to get done today. I'm going to go home later in the week. I'm going to fire this up on YouTube, and I'm going to see the 24 things I did wrong while I was standing up here. I'm going to notice all the little idiosyncrasies. I'm going to notice all the little speech jumps, the problems, the pauses, the things like that, because I am absolutely my own worst critic. And it's one of those things where use that to look inside and really examine what you need to change. And then change it. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. It's all about a discipline, a wanting to follow, a wanting to be a follower of Jesus Christ. We are here because we have made a very active decision. We are here because we want to be. Free will was given to mankind so that we may live, and we may talk, and we may do anything we want, and deal with the consequences afterwards. It's not a free pass to do anything, especially because of the country we live in. You know, we live in a country where we're free to talk to and worship and pretty much say whatever we want. You know, in any open public forum, you can almost say anything you want except for making threats and things like that. But we're here today because we made a decision to be here. And so what I ask you is, I ask you to take that one step further. If you're here today and you need to find this power again, if you want to give yourself over to that power, if you want to become baptized, if you want to connect with something that is greater in yourself, if you've already made that connection and you need to jumpstart that again, ask for help, ask for prayers, ask for time, ask for anything you need to get back on that track. Because now that you've made that step, you know, the real journey begins, the journey of living life as a Christian. Our abilities as people to go out and to better the world. Find one person, find one instance, find something and make it better. Be unified in thought and in mind. And it's one of those things where you say, of course, you know, I want to go do that. Of course I want to go do that, but I'm so busy and I've got all these limitations and there are all these things going on. You know, there are all these blockers up in my way that I can't get past and I need to get around and I need to get through. And I understand. You know, if I really broke down what the last couple of months of my life was you'd be short breath just hearing about it. But still, you've got to push forward. You've got to push forward because despite my flaws, I'm here for you. Despite the flaws of anybody in this room, we are here for you as a congregation. That is one of the reasons why we gather and why we worship together. Is so in those weakest moments, we can turn and we can just simply ask for a helping hand. Not because I'm going to solve all your problems for you. That would be amazing if I could do that. If I could, I absolutely would. But I can't. But it is one of those things where when we look at it, you know, we can really lend a hand to one another. We can really be unified as people, despite the differences that we have. And so if you're here today and you want to be baptized, if you want to give yourself over to that power, I ask you to meditate on these things as we stand and sing the song of invitation.